This is your host for the next 25 minutes or so of the most interactive television, not only in Chicago, but anywhere. Of course, you may have paid attention to the fact that I am wearing this pink ribbon. And the reason that I'm wearing this pink ribbon is because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And of course, all members of the Congressional Black Caucus today wore pink in honor of promoting breast cancer awareness. One of the ways to deal with health care and health needs is to be aware and know what it is that we need to do. And so I want to thank everybody who paid attention. And actually on Monday night, we're going to have a serious discussion about cancer, because every Monday we do a discussion with about 5 or 6 doctors called Chat with the Doctors. And on Monday coming up, because we're still in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're going to talk about cancer. We're also going to have a press conference with a group of physicians on Monday morning, and we're going to talk about some new rules that CMS is about to put in effect that the doctors are unhappy about. I'm not happy about it. I'm not excited. And so we'll have a lot to talk about coming up. Let me just, as we get into the show, the big issues in the House of Representatives this week and next week is the whole question of will we be able to enact the president's proposed agenda in terms of a budget for the next year, and also in terms of an infrastructure bill. If you've ever driven or ridden across the United States of America, in all likelihood, you've come across some bridges that you weren't too happy about. We've got some in Chicago that I'd just as soon not cross. But I went to New Orleans a few weeks ago with my good friend, Dr. Willie Wilson, and we went after the hurricane. Dr. Wilson went to take some money down to New Orleans. He likes to do that. And he gave away money to people to help them. But we drove across bridges that I just as soon not have been on. Water was all the way up. If this was the bridge, water was right along here. And it was not the most pleasant sight. So it's just an indication that we really do need to fix our infrastructure. The engineers in our country have suggested for years that we are in need of tremendous infrastructure improvement. So we're talking about roads, highways, bridges, but we're also talking about human infrastructure. We're talking about needs that people have. So the big question is, are we going to reach agreement on passage of these economic agenda items? The president proposed $3.5 trillion in one instance, and of course, that's pretty much DOA. The Republicans suggested that that was dead on arrival, and some Democrats suggested the same thing, that this was just too much money to be talking about spending. Of course, it depends on how you look at it. Some people call it spending. Other people like myself call it investing. And I take the position that if there's little investment, there's little return. if there's serious investment, then you have an opportunity to get a great return. And by and large, wealthy people who are in corporate America, the 1%, and the people that we were proposing to pay for this, by and large, have not been in agreement to do so, even though at the end of the day, whatever benefits that will come, that is in terms of any profits that would be made, always end up in the hands of those who own the apparatuses for production and distribution of goods and services. And those are generally the wealthy people. Even though it may look as though low-income people are benefiting, but generally, if a low-income person, for example, individuals who get a tax credit because they have small children and they earn less than $75,000 a year, and they get $300 for a child if they have a child under 6, $250 if they're over 6, they're going to spend every dime of that money that they get. They're going to plow it right back into the economy. They're going to pay their light bill. They're going to pay their gas bill. They're going to buy some food. They're going to pay their rent. They're going to pay their mortgage. And the people who ultimately will get the benefit of it are the people that they will pay their mortgage to. Are the people who own the milk that they're buying or who produce the bread that they're going to eat. But at any rate, those are economic questions and arguments and all of that. But I have a guest in the studio this evening, and I'm delighted to have him. And I'm going to ask him if he will join in. First of all, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to my viewing audience. Tell me your name, where you live, your age, where you go to school, and then I've got some other questions that I want to ask.
Hi, I'm Jacob Drews. I live in Oak Park, right here in the district. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a junior at Oak Park and River Forest High School.
You know, Oak Park River Forest is considered to be one of the very best public high schools in the state.
I bet.
As a matter of fact, one of the very best high schools, public high schools in the nation, as a matter of fact. Are you having a lot of fun?
Yeah.
As a junior in high school?
I'm definitely enjoying being back. We were nearly all remote last year, and my freshman year was half of it was cut off by COVID, so I'm excited to be back in person.
What are you studying? What subjects do you have?
Well, I have all of the basics, like history and math and science. I'm in physics. I take French, an elective, and I like that. It's my third year taking it. My math class is probably one of my harder ones, but I really enjoy going to school and learning.
Do you speak Spanish?
No, I don't. I took Spanish in elementary school, and then I decided I wanted to start taking French, and I'd like to become fluent in French, though.
I always fought my advisors in college because I took 10 hours of German. And I always say that I should have been taking Spanish, that I don't know why I wanted to take French, but my advisor didn't like the French professor, and he said, he said the French professor didn't teach a lot, that he just talked about this Romance language and France and all that. And he says, I want you to take German and not. And so I took 10 hours of German. Sprechen Sie Deutsch, kommen Sie her, mein Freund, haben Sie Geld, and so on. But I've never had the opportunity to really make use of it. And that's why I always say I would have been better served had I taken Spanish, because I could go over to the village. I could go into the primarily Hispanic areas and communicate and talk to the people. I could go down to Pilsen and shop around, go in the restaurants and order what I want and what I need. But at any rate, such is life. So you're enjoying French.
Yeah. I think, like you said, Spanish actually would be very useful here. I mean, not a whole lot of French speakers walking around, but my older sister took French, so I decided to follow her down that path as well.
So you may end up going to the Sorbonne at some point and walking around in gay Paris. Yeah, and swallows come over to Capistrano, all that kind of good stuff. Let me ask you, why are you are involved with us in an internship, and you come to our office and you're engaged and you're involved and you help do what we do and you pick up on what's being done. Why would you be spending time doing an internship when you could be doing some of all the other good stuff that teenagers do?
Well, I mean, I've always been interested in politics. I mean, since as far as I could remember, practically in elementary school. And I've served some other local representatives, and I just really want to get the experience and see how like a congressional office, a district office like yours works. I'd like to someday be a congressman or a senator, and I mean, the experience is just invaluable.
So you think that you'd like to ultimately run for public office?
Yeah, I would.
And help make these decisions.
Yeah.
That are there any particular areas that you have concerns about in terms of how our world is shaped, what's going on in our city or in our state, or what needs improving or changing?
I think for me, it's probably healthcare and our education system. I mean, healthcare, I think people need to have access to it, especially lower income people and people not as privileged as me, to have health insurance, and to pay that much amount of money for some of these things is kind of ridiculous. And for education, I think education is the key to success for so many people. And you can't really pull people out of certain circumstances if they don't have the educational background and the building blocks there.
Well, I certainly would totally agree with every bit of that. I always say that health is wealth. That is, you can have everything else in the world that there is to have, but if you're not feeling well,
You don't have much.
or if you're sick, or your corns are hurting, or whatever it might be, then you're missing some of the fulfillment of life. And I think that's what intrigued me about health. I worked in education before, and I was a public school teacher. And then I kind of got the opportunity to come in contact with health. I took a job working at a federally qualified health center. And that really intrigued me as I began to learn about it. And then I ended up with a job running what was called a health planning organization for a number of years. And I got all interested in health. And since I always wondered about these things, and I wondered, why is it that some people could get the care they needed and other people could not? And why some people, at the time when I started, Cook County Hospital was the big question on the table, because in our county government has the responsibility to provide medical care for the indigent. Mm-hmm. Some counties don't have that at all. But in our county, the county government has the responsibility to make sure that any person who is medically indigent, don't have any money, don't have any insurance, that they can go to the county government and get taken care of. And it used to be real bad. I'm saying, people used to bemoan the fact that they had to go to a county hospital. Fortunately, county government has come a long ways.
Yeah.
And the county hospital is a place where you can get quality care, because the politicians have put more money into county government, and of course the federal government and state governments have also put more money in. And so now we have something called Medicare and Medicaid, which will pay for people who don't have the money to pay themselves. Medicare, of course, will pay for anybody 65 and over. And there are some people who don't agree with that. There are some people who say that Medicare ought to be means tested. Mm-hmm. That is, that only individuals who don't have the means to pay themselves ought to be able to get this care. They call it free care. It's not free, that somebody has to pay, and we use our tax dollars to pay. So it's fascinating. I mean, the whole business of making decisions is pretty fascinating. I'm saying we do it in a fairly civil way, civilized. Some countries are not quite as civilized. Well, they haven't reached the point. We argue ferociously, but we don't generally take up arms against each other when we disagree. Although we did vote this week in the House to charge an individual with criminal contempt of Congress, because Congress said that he should answer questions, and he said he didn't think he really needed to do that, and that the former president of the United States had told him that he didn't have to answer those questions. And it's like saying that they are above the law, and we are a country of laws. And if you don't comply with what the law say you ought to do, then something else happens to you. We'll see how this plays out. I'm sure that it will probably end up in court, I would imagine. Because when people have resources, then they can take things to the next level. And the ultimate in our country that decides whether or not something is legal, of course, is our Supreme Court. And that's why people say that in order for something to become absolute law, you have to get enough agreement with 4 different entities: the House of Representatives, the Senate, the President, and the Supreme Court. And they all ultimately have to agree on something, and then it becomes law. And if you disagree, there are approaches. You go to court and ask the courts to consider your disagreement. So being a lawyer is not so bad because there are people who study the law, and the ones who want to practice, they practice the law. Although there are a lot of attorneys who never practice law in terms of going into the court to practice law. They work in other things. But have you decided where you're going to college?
No. I'll actually do my applications next year. I'd like a coast, different weather maybe. Maybe a little sunnier, warmer.
Well, there are all kind of colleges. Illinois has a number of outstanding colleges and universities, both public and private. There are other people who like the Ivy League schools, and they like to go there. There are some people who like the Big Ten schools because they have this reputation of doing all kind of things. Some people like the athletic schools because they like the idea of being where there were winners. I kind of knew if I was going to college where I was going because there was basically one place that I could go. And so I knew that, and I knew if I wanted to go.
Gotta go there.
Well, I had an uncle and an aunt who lived in the town where there was our state school. And I knew I could live with them in terms of until I could figure out my bearings. I didn't have any money. As a matter of fact, I had $20 when I went to college, and I had a $50 scholarship.
$50.
Well, the state of Arkansas at that time gave each high school one $50 scholarship if they went to a state school, and the $50 could be applied to the tuition. And of course, if you were an African American or black, there were only 2 or 3 schools you could go to. And there were other schools in the state at that time, but you couldn't attend those.
Mm-hmm.
And so the school I went to was the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. It was actually Arkansas AM&N College, agricultural, mechanical, and normal college. That it was a teacher's college, and it also was a college that prepared people for careers in agriculture, and it also had some vocational education, I studied history and teaching because I wanted to be a teacher, but it was a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, a fellow named Fulbright was from Arkansas, not Ed Fulbright. And they established something. He was a scholarly kind of guy who pushed education. And so there are Fulbright fellows and Fulbright scholarships and other kinds of things. But I tell you, it's fun having you. We are delighted that you have chosen to spend some time with us. We thank your parents for letting you come and join us and be with us. And our time is about to run out. So if you were talking to a young person who wanted to be successful in life, whatever one's definition of success might be, what would you recommend to them that they do?
I know it's kind of cliche, but I would probably recommend just do what you like, because I know I like politics, so I know I want to pursue it. And that's really my only motivation with it. I just really enjoy it, so to do something that you enjoy, and also to try to get involved as early as possible and seek out opportunities like in your community or somewhere where you can test the waters, see if you like it, and see if you really want to pursue it later on.
I think that's excellent, excellent advice. I think it works all the time. There are some young people who know already that they want to be scientists. They know they want to be physicians. They know they want to be attorneys. They know they want to be professional athletes. They know they want to be theologians. They want to work in faith groups and organizations. And so just having a sense of what you want to do. I knew I wanted to be a school teacher. I mean, I kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do. And individuals who are friends of mine, some of them claim that I am still a frustrated school teacher and that I've never gotten over my desire to be a teacher. But I also try to remember and say that you can't lead where you don't go, and you can't teach what you don't know. And so it's fun, it's enjoyable. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy being an elected official. I enjoy representing people. And I trust that I've had some success in terms of things that we've created that did not exist before we created them. Opportunities that we helped generate that did not exist before we generated them. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a pleasure indeed. And yeah, that Oak Park River First High School.
I do like it.
It is one of the best. All right. Thank you. Thanks
you.
to all of our viewers, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.